Good afternoon and welcome back to the Car Design Dialogue. We've had some most amazing sessions this morning from the professional designers. We've had the Bronco team, the Hummer team, we've had Robin Page in Sweden talking around his studio, and we've had Pierre talking about visualization and materials. But now we're going to take a different approach. We're going to look at the next generation of designers. But to be able to do that, we really want to look at some old heads, some guys who have been there, some guys who are involved in the recruitment of this talent. And we're going to go to Magna Studio to do that. But before we do that, I just want to fire up a poll because the engagement of you and your involvement is extremely important to us throughout the next 2 days and the sessions that we do. And being a bit of a different session with a different approach, if I can get my colleague Chris to put up the poll, should students be designing for current challenges or thinking much further ahead? Look to the future as one option. Education is a place to experience. Students should focus on current and near future challenges. Professional design studios need both types of designers. Well, actually, that's what we're going to discuss in the session, but the poll should be up now. And then if you want to click, you'll get instant results. And we'll be able to see what the feedback is really. You know, we've got a group of students. Now, once this video is played, Larry Erickson from Magna Exteriors is going to come on for some questioning. Now, this is an opportunity for us to talk to him about his experience of the session itself, but more importantly, as a supplier and a person who has worked in the OEMs, he knows what they're looking for talent. So if you've got any questions as a junior or a senior designer looking for talent, or a student, you know, fire some questions in the box and I'm more than happy to share them with Larry directly. But now let's take you to the Magna Studio where Larry is going to be talking with Crystal Windham and Jeff Hammoud about, you know, the challenges the kids are facing, the students today in 2020, and how they're actually looking at solutions, and more importantly, what sort of inspirations are they giving us and what they're looking for when recruiting talent. So I'll hand over to Larry, Jeff, and Crystal.
Good morning. We're very fortunate to be joined 6 feet apart by two of the leaders today and ultimately the leaders tomorrow. So Crystal Windham of General Motors Design and Jeff Hammoud of Rivian Design. And both of them are hopefully leading some of these people in the future that have entered this year's contest. Hopefully they're, you know, amongst them is a new hire. But we'd like to talk about the work and about this year's competition. And so I'd like to kick it off with a first question of, you know, designers have always had a good reputation for engaging with students and with supporting, whether it's a competition or just an ongoing project at a local school. When it comes to student work, how do you see the benefit in that? And what do you see are the things that you know, your company and you can learn?
So I would say when I look at the student work and what they can bring, the perspective that they can bring to our company, General Motors, is the students that can really think outside the box, right? Really understand the project brief and bring the total package. So really understanding what they're being asked to do and looking at the research behind the customer, the vehicle type, how the vehicle will be used, how they will present their concept with the storytelling, understanding the day in the life of the customer utilizing their vehicle, as well as the creativity behind the functionality, both interior and exterior, and ultimately doing all of that together while considering the brand aesthetics. So looking at the total package. Next, what those students can bring is their fresh thinking, right? And doing it through 2D, 3D, animation, the whole package, right? And also looking at the mechanics on how things work, really getting out of their comfort zone with just looking at aesthetics, but how things work. And then going beyond, looking at some of the contestants in this design competition, going beyond looking at what colors, what materials really tell the story as well. And then I would say lastly, with that fresh perspective, being comfortable thinking outside and pushing the boundaries on imagination, innovation, having fun with it, and really looking at what that vehicle type could be, the proportions, taking on a new aesthetic as well, and making us feel uncomfortable.
Great. Jeff, as a leader of Rivian Design Organization, you have a new brand, new possibilities. How does the student work appeal to you, and what do you see in it?
Well, Crystal did a great job of pretty much touching everything, but I'll try to expand on some of that. One of the great things about looking at students' work, aside from, you want to be able to, do they understand the product brief? Are they thinking outside of just simply aesthetics is very, very important. But one of the things that students in general provide that you don't always get from more experienced designers is their innocence. They have this innocence to them that they don't know too much that will kind of stifle their creativity. And as you become a more seasoned designer, you self-filter things that you don't even realize you're doing, whether it's because your boss didn't like something, you knew something's not feasible, or that's going to cost too much. The students are free of all those boundaries, and because they're free in that sense, they'll come up with designs or ideas that, they might be crazy, they might be off the wall, but a designer that is a little bit more experienced, they might stop themselves from doing that. And that's something that's really nice that you can see from, students that are, free of all those boundaries. And when you take some of those thoughts, some of those ideas, maybe some of them are a little further than you'd like to go or a little bit uncomfortable, but that's what a student should do. They should make people, especially leaders or even other designers, uncomfortable to make us think, okay, yeah, maybe that idea is a little bit crazy, but how could we distill it into something that is manufacturable, that is something that will meet cost and not take something away. As you start to distill through many different filters, whether it is, all these other constraints, taking something that is a more unique idea, by the time you distill it down, you'll come up with something that maybe another company or another brand hasn't come up with. And that's really what we try to look for from students. So,
great. Jeff, this year's competition challenge came under a different light as the pandemic unfolded. Some of the entries directly address how a vehicle can provide unique solutions for unique situations and problems. As a designer, what do you believe are some of the ways tomorrow's vehicles can deliver value?
Well, it's interesting as you start to think about mobility in general. You can see, autonomy is going to be something. It's not, in my opinion, it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when, where, there will be very much touchless interactions with vehicles. Whether if you look at, for example, Uber, Lyft, things like that, you don't really care what car is coming. It could be an S-Class or, a Ford Focus. Nobody really cares the difference. It's just, well, when can it get here? Is it clean? And will it get me to my place safely? And then when you start to think about those interactions, it's less about the type of vehicle. It's more about the interaction with the vehicle. And when you start to think about those interactions, I mean, COVID is a great example of that. Is there a way you could get into the vehicle that it's sanitized? Is there a way that you could not touch the door handles as it opens? As you start to live with the vehicle as a space, as something to commute from, maybe you don't have vehicles anymore that are parked in your driveway. You shift from an ownership model to a shared model, and you start to interact with these vehicles where it's just something to take you to work and you're commuting. It's going to be less about what does the exterior look like and, what brand is it. It's going to be more about what does that brand offer me from an experience, more like a hotel experience, for example. Is it clean? Is it nice on the inside? Do I have a flexible space that I could catch up on emails, put my laptop together? Just something that will help you do things that you typically wouldn't do in an automotive vehicle today is something that we're definitely going to need to look forward to in the future. So.
Great. Crystal, basically the same question. Another point on this is we saw a lot of vehicles that had like a space in them, Do you see yourself or your company in the future looking at things in maybe a different way where a vehicle solves a different kind of problem?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what's exciting about seeing this project brief and how this vehicle can present itself to a customer. So just looking back, on this year, it's been very tough with the pandemic, and there is a heightened awareness of the desire of more safety, security, and more flexibility with the lifestyle. So the way that we look at a vehicle is an extension of that customer and allowing them not only to travel within it, but that vehicle becoming more purposeful for them outside of just the driving experience. So if you can imagine you're working or relaxing, what can that vehicle do, while you are busy with your lifestyle, and how can that be an extension and allow you to do or take part in your lifestyle even more? So with autonomous driving, the EV technology, all of that technology, cameras, the connectivity with your devices, that vehicle can take on certain errands or take on certain functionalities without you being in it. So that's what intrigues me about looking at this student work, because it allows you to think beyond just the vehicle transporting the person and really an extension of their lifestyle.
Great. Crystal, the three finalists all have physical transformation as a key of their designs. Going forward, do you see more of this physical transformation in what basically constitutes the envelope of the vehicle,
Absolutely. So the contestants presented transformation in their vehicles. Do I see this going forward? I sure hope so. I really do. This makes me so excited. Even though I work for Cadillac, I look at my colleagues that worked on the Hummer EV and how they truly immerse themselves with that customer and that vehicle type, understanding the technology and what that vehicle could bring for that particular customer. I look at the Hummer EV really owning that off-road dominance and looking at the crab walk and looking at the underbody cameras and really taking on this persona so that customer can really not only be immersed in their lifestyle, but have a vehicle to amplify it at the same time is just amazing. So I hope that we're going to see a lot more of it.
Well, that's great. Jeff, along the same lines, and ever since everyone's been in school, students have always had this aspect of something transforming into something else. But now it's also about the life they want to lead and more of a connection to the customer. How do you see that going forward? And when you go looking for talent, do you look at those things?
Well, definitely, because if you look at, once again, putting through the lens of Rivian, and our vehicles are all about the adventure, and what does that adventure mean? Adventure could mean many different things. Is it going camping? Is it just going on a picnic with your family? Is it just going to the mall? It could be many different things, but how do you take all those different use cases and transform them into a way that's very low barrier for the customer to interact with? Especially utility vehicles are obviously becoming the norm right now. You can continue to see SUVs outselling sedans, and that's not just a trend. I think it's going to continue that way just because people want usability of those vehicles. So when we look at students' work, we really want to see what can they do to think outside the box and try to take some of those common problems that some people may have and convert them into something that could really be help be usable. One of the examples I always like to use, for example, a Rivian R1T, something as simple as, if anybody's lived with a truck before, a vehicle that's literally made to haul things, is not that simple to do something simple as grocery shopping. You're not going to throw it in the bed because it'll just fly around. You don't really have a front trunk, so you end up throwing your groceries in the back seat. So it's amazing how a vehicle that's literally designed to haul things isn't that great at doing something as simple as grocery shopping. So for us, that's why we try to think of how else can we do some of those interfaces. And we talk about things like camping, for example. One of the features I love about our truck is, this idea of the camp kitchen that slides out of the gear tunnel. So if you're at your campsite, pull out your kitchen, and that's one of those transformations. And that's just on a smaller scale now, but when we start to think as we continue to go on, like, what else does that mean? If there isn't a driver, for example, for autonomous, what else does that open up for you? What are these flexible spaces that we could continue to use? Or like we're sitting today here, 6 feet apart. If this is something that continues in the future, God, I hope it doesn't. But if it does, how does a vehicle address those issues? Does the seating configuration spread apart to offer that distancing? Does a barrier come up to separate, one occupant from the other? So it's really going to be interesting to see what are some of the problems that need to be solved, but also how do the students start to address those? And especially since the students are living this firsthand, they get to be a lot more creative, and they're not tied to product life cycles. They don't have to think, well, this is going to take 4 years to come out. They're like, well, I'm designing a vehicle in my mind that's for today.
Both of you have recently premiered vehicles that are basically around this idea of adventure, okay? Both of your companies, okay? And this idea of travel and exploring the world around us, a lot of what came in as a student work, took those same kind of values and same underlying. When you think about that, you think about that empathy that you need to have to design effectively at that level. What do you think students should be looking to learn or to develop to appeal in that way? And Jeff, I'll start with you. And how do you, if you had to define that ideal student that could, new hire that could be empathetic with a problem or understand it, what do you think are some of the skills that contribute to that?
Well, I definitely think that the student that is going to be looking at whether it's adventure vehicles, whether it's something else, is that they need to go through and, just like any typical design project, is understand the customer. Like, what is the customer trying to go after? And if it is under the lens of adventure, what does that adventure mean? How does the customer use it? Do research, and that doesn't just mean going out and going on the internet and looking up, okay, what do snowboarders do and where's a snowboard going to go? Actually digging deeper, and whether that's doing interviews, whether that's going to a parking lot. For example, one of the things we did when we were working on our vehicle is we just watched people load things at IKEA. And just said, okay, well, this is an actual thing that somebody does. What is the best way to help address some of these concerns? And actually getting more qualitative data through experiences themselves. If they're going to go, if it is, to use the example, snowboarding, instead of just researching it, actually go out and do it. What are some of the pain points that they experience, or witness somebody else doing it? So thinking more in depth in terms of what is the problem and how am I going to solve it, and doing research through that, because living those experiences, you're going to gain way more experience than just reading about it.
Crystal, you've undoubtedly interfaced with students in a 14-week, tight schedule. They a lot of times they have to run this balance of working on the concept and working on the artifact. Any hints on what makes that more successful, or what they can look for when going down sort of a 4-week project,
Yeah. So just to add to what Jeff was speaking on, really digging deep with the customer is very important, and not just from reading books or someone else telling you about it. Really immersing yourself in their experience and what they are after in their vehicle is very important. And so how do they do this? I'll give an example. When you travel, I know you kind of limit it right now, but when you do travel, don't stay in the touristy areas. Really get off the beaten path and understand the other customer that's out there, the other environment. And I think that really takes your creativity to another level. You have to have a sense of comfort in being able to think outside the box. One of the things that we're really proud of is having a diverse team. Within a diverse team, if you yourself haven't experienced, certain aspects in life and different adventures, maybe someone on your team has. So there has to be a certain level of open-mindedness that you have to listen and understand that experience and become more immersed with it as well.
Okay, great. I'm sure that when you look at the process of hiring as a student, it's kind of a curtain, and you're not sure exactly what takes place. But most of the time in a large company, you're looking at dozens, if not hundreds, of portfolios over a period of time that you'd consider hiring. When you go to open that portfolio, what is it that you feel sets a student aside or raises them up above the, what's the key to getting that attention? Because a lot of times, they don't know exactly what format it's going to be in. It's going to be digital these days, but they don't know how it's going to be seen. Can you give them some insight into what it takes to grab your attention when you're looking at, dozens of portfolios? So, Crystal?
When I look at portfolios from students, I am looking for a broad range of their skill set. The 2D, and let's not say the finished 2D. I'd like to see the thinking behind that led you to the final 2D rendering, right? So the quick sketches, sketchbooks are very important so that we can understand the thought process and the judgment behind deciding to pass over some concepts and going after your final concept. Then, of course, those that can showcase their design in 3D, if that is hands-on sculpting or if it is alias, great. And if they can go beyond and showcase animation and how things work within their vehicle, I think is a plus. Definitely interior and exterior design within the portfolio so that they have the opportunity to showcase the total experience for that product with the customer. And next, I would say what that vehicle or the vehicles within their portfolio go to the next level with accessories, the color choices, the materials. I think all of that is very important when I look at a portfolio. And then also, don't leave out your other interests. Don't leave out your other interests so that we can get to know you as an individual and how you can bring diverse thought, diverse experiences to each team, because that makes you more versatile. It makes you more adaptable within different environments, and that too is a plus.
Okay. Jeff, that hiring process, ultimately you want to hire someone that either fits or can grow to your brand. Okay? When you're looking into that portfolio as a design leader at Rivian, what are you looking for in who they are and what they do and the way they do it?
Well, Crystal touched on it in a previous question, but one of the things we want to look for is really important is diversity. You don't really want everybody to be able to look at their portfolio and say, well, this person can really relate to my brand XYZ. You want to be able to have different insights, different perspectives. So it is really important to have, well, that's diversity in their aesthetic, diversity in their background. That is something that you really want to look for. And the other thing we want to really make sure is just in terms of a portfolio, I always like to give students this advice is, put your strongest work first. Like that's the first thing, that's somebody's going to be looking at is have your best work first. That's the first thing that's going to grab your eye. And if something, as a student, I've been in this situation before, and I remember it's like, you want to put as much work in there to show what it is, but only put your strongest work in there because your portfolio is only as good as your weakest sketch. Many times you've seen, these great portfolios and you'll see one really not so great one, and that's all you remember. It's like it's just human nature. It's what you do. So I'd really ask the students, is like, put your best work in there. And I know sometimes you can be close to it because it's your own. Ask your peers, ask your instructors, like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think? Is there anything I should remove here? Sometimes less is more, honestly. Just show your best work. But then also, Chris also touched on it, but show the range. As we go towards, so many different tools that students are working on that have these beautiful 3D tools. Seeing some of the work that students do with that free software Blender, for example, is amazing. But it's hard to see personality through digital models. You don't really get to see it. And when you see a slew of digital models in every single portfolio, yes, it'll show your thinking and maybe your design aesthetic, but it doesn't show your personality. So having some of that loose 2D work really shows how do you think. And that's really important. So yes, it's nice to have that finished 3D work, but we really want to see some of that looser sketch work to show it's like, okay, can this person generate ideas quickly and they don't have to wait to finish a 3D model?
Well, I want to commend both of you. I think you've done a wonderful job of just informing students and getting them to give a feel of what's taking place. You know, for, I would say, literally almost every entrant, you know, they are going to be under these conditions, you know, hopefully not all of them, but you know, looking for their next job, their employer. Is there any hint at sort of getting attention? You know, we just talked about what it takes to close it and what it takes to confirm that this is the right person, and I think you've covered that wonderfully. But how do you get that first spark of attention when you open that portfolio? You know, you see a lot of portfolios where they basically have an information sheet on the cover and then a CV, and then, you know, you're 4 pages in and you're going, okay, when's it going to happen? You know, what is that thing that grabs you at the beginning of opening a portfolio? And Jeff, why don't you see if you can?
It's hard to get away from, you know, being an automotive designer to just be blown away by a beautiful sketch. Honestly, that's like just having something that's beautifully rendered, you know, beautifully styled. That's the first thing. It's the eye candy. You know, that's, to me, that's going to want me to continue to look through. We're superficial. That's why we like pictures more than we like words. So having that beautiful thing that you're going to jump to will help us want us to dig in deeper to see your thought process, to see how you refine designs, how you go through there. But if there's, you know, the beginning is really, it's the cover of the book, honestly. That's it's a magazine cover. You want to grab it and be like, okay, no, let me dig deeper. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
Crystal,
just to add to that,
Yeah.
hey, that's what we do as designers. We add beauty to the world, right? So that's the first thing I'm gonna look at is the beautiful sketches, how you decide to render. The proportions of a vehicle matter, inside and out. The proportions matter. But secondly, I would say the brand. Whatever brand you decide to design for, make sure that it really signifies what that brand is about. If you can do that with beauty, understanding the brand, wow, you've done something really, really great, and it helps you stand out. I would also say that I'm also intrigued when someone can add beauty with the brand and make me feel uncomfortable at the same time. Show me something new, fresh, that really goes beyond what we have seen today. I mean, years beyond. So I want to see all of it, you know. So again, beauty that relates to the brand and designers that can really stretch the boundaries.
Well, this has been great and informational. So I want to thank both of you for taking the time, but also I'm very encouraged in the automobile industry all of a sudden. You know, it kind of was struggling, like a lot of things, but I think it's a really exciting time, and again, thank you for taking the time to judge your work and inform the students.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, I hope you enjoyed Larry interviewing Jeff and Crystal, giving up their time both for you today to actually see this. This is the first time this video has been shown, but more importantly, talking about how they judge students' work and what they're looking for when it comes to recruiting talent. You know, it is the wow factor. It is that first impression. It's not about quantity, it's about quality, and also having that skill set with a broader range. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring Larry back into the conversation. We've got about 10 minutes, Larry. I'm going to fire some difficult questions your way, my friend. So you better be ready.
Okay.
The first question I've got is, I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but the Bold Perspective Award is something that's been going on for Magna for a period of a number of years. And, you know, CDN are very proud to support the event. But, you know, we've got the 3 winners, if I can quickly go through it, because I'll get to my question. But we have our Asian winners, our European winners, and our American winners. And tomorrow we're going to announce, or you're going to announce, the overall winner, the global Bold Perspective winner. But why does Magna support this event? Magna's a supplier. It's not Rivian. It's not GM. Why is this important to you?
Well, it really started with our president a few years ago in trying to understand what is coming, because it used to be that a part supplier just simply built to print. Somebody would come up with something and ship it off, and it was very simple. But now the very components in the car are merging in a way, and your grill is no longer just an opening for a radiator. It's now, it was always a decoration from even the earliest days, but now it's turning into, what's potentially an information panel, what's potentially a sensor panel. So it has all these other different activities, and what's even behind it is changing. So you have what I would say are components that, in a way, you should be able to look at the latest trends and say, okay, this is where it's going. But you also need to look at the thinking of the people that are going to lead the next group of those, because the development in materials, the development in technologies, and the development in user interfaces are far more complex than they were when, decades ago.
Excellent. So, and I understand why Jeff and a lot of people will know this tomorrow, but Jeff and Crystal and the guys at Pixar and Harley Davidson are involved in the judging process. I mean, they get a sneak preview, I guess, of the best students before anyone can get their grubby hands on them. But from a student perspective, Larry, so I enter the competition. I've become a finalist and I've won. Have you got any examples of any of those students who have taken that next step past winning the competition? Can you think of any that have kind of gone to the next level?
Well, yes, in particular, last year, the European contestant actually, or the finalist, European finalist, actually was hired as a result of one of the articles that was published on the CDN website that had his work in it. I think the other thing here is not only the exposure they get, to the larger audience that is Car Design News, and we also publish these things through our own websites, but it's also this sense of packaging your work together, putting it to a specific challenge or a problem, and then putting it out there. And I think all those things add to hopefully what they see as value in competing in this competition. I think for us, what we find very interesting is how the different regions are, and I know the other judges have commented on this too, is that the internet is in a way merging all this, but it's also making the cultural differences with the ideas stand out, because in a lot of ways the quality levels are starting to even up. Everyone's starting to get the same tool set, have the same communication lines. So the differences in the design stand out a little bit more from a cultural perspective.
And which part of the world are you most impressed with, Larry?
I really can't say that there's been one they're different in different aspects. In China, it's obviously a quickly evolving industry that they're attached to and that they're exposed to. In Europe, I think that a lot of the interaction with the user, at the end user, has its unique aspects. And in the United States, I think it's a little bit more that the cultural differences there provide a larger variety of it, So I think there's contestants in every region that I think really stand out. And I think going back to the panel discussion we just talked about, a lot of those pieces are what defines who's, the better contestants, the ones that can get their message across, the ones that do it efficiently. I mean, we literally have hundreds of entrants. So in a lot of ways, you're looking through those contestants in a way that you would look through a stack of portfolios.
Yeah. And just because we need to wrap up the session, but more importantly, Larry, there's an opportunity for us to have a sneak hint maybe of next year's brief. I mean, there's a very small audience here, so you can give them a head start. It's up to you. But do you want to give us a hint for next year?
We're really going to try to double down on this functional interface, because even though you have these dramatically different markets, taking one type of a vehicle and then saying how would that be tailored to suit these different areas and connect it directly with them. It also gives a student the opportunity to do their research in their situation, which I think, it was pointed out by Crystal and Jeff, their ability to basically break down a problem, find what's relevant, connect it to a design solution is really important. And I think those are the fundamental things that lead you to what the next OEM will do in the future, whether it's a startup or an existing one. So yeah, we're going to take something that's that we believe is strongly functional, has a good interface to the exterior, because that's sort of our arena, and then pose that in each one of these diverse cultures.
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. That hint is you've got people sketching as we speak.
I hope so. It's always good to look at the sketches.
Yeah, and looking forward to announcing it on CDN soon. So thank you, Larry from Michigan.
You're welcome.
Just before I close the session, so thanks, Larry. See you soon. See you tomorrow with the announcement.
Take care.
And before I close the session, what I would say is something quite interesting was said on the Bronco and said by Crystal, is as students, this opportunity of doing your market research. And I would say for portfolio in today's market, it may be worth you actually filming it, doing that research, but showing to people how you've done it. So students maybe film it, you have the skill set to do it, and show people you're actually doing it, not just writing down that I've done some market research. But before I go, and before we head off to the suite section, I just want to bring up the poll again. So Chris, can you bring up the poll results for us so we can see what the end poll result was? So as Chris brings up the poll results, which I'm looking on a second screen, which is why I'm looking that way, it was fair to say when I did look earlier, it was about, the professional designer studios need both types of designers. I guess the ones that can do current stuff and are looking at today, but the futuristic stuff, which I guess is a jack of all trades, which kind of makes sense. But I'm going to leave you now for this session. It's been a pleasure working with you. Go to the networking area, click the button to your left of your screen, go and see the expo, and I'll hand over to a holding screen, and you can go off to see the suite, which is going to be by Dynamica, and it's going to be on how they're becoming 100% carbon neutral, which is super interesting. Thanks, everyone.